I am a facilitator of fascination and purveyor of positivity. And what does this mean? Well, it means I facilitate fascinating experiences to create positive experiences regardless of the circumstances. And one of the very important things is to understand, well, what do we mean by positivity? I was sort of meditating on some of the definitions that people have sometimes given for positivity. Things like, it's called, what is it, the RCG syndrome. Have you ever heard of this?
Can you talk real loud?
Oh yes, I can speak a little louder. So
I'm almost deaf, so I need
okay.
help.
And so the RCG syndrome, this is the rose-colored glasses syndrome, where we think, oh, those actually are kind of rose-colored, aren't they?
Yep.
So it's the idea that positivity being you put on these glasses and you see everything through the lens, that everything is fine and dandy, even if it isn't fine and dandy. This is the idea that things just have to work out because they have to work out, so they will work out. Sometimes also it can come in the form of people saying, well, it's always worked this way, so I'm just going to keep doing it this way. These are all fallacies, right? Just because things have to be fine and dandy, that doesn't mean that they will be fine and dandy. So I propose a new definition of positivity, and I write about it in my book, Are You Positive? Rethinking Positive Thinking. This book has the 8 steps that I've identified for thinking, being, and staying positive. I use the word positive as an acronym that helps it be more meaningful and more memorable for us, and we'll be going over all of these today. But before we do any of that, I have a little story to share with you folks about just how important it is to be clear about what we mean, because what we say, well, it could be interpreted in many different ways. Because if we're not clear about what we mean, that puts us on the spot for potentially creating negative experiences, which is by definition the opposite of what we're trying to do. So here's a little story. I call this the whole story because it uses a card with a hole in it. Therefore, it's a whole story. Yeah. Now, this story is not to be confused with the whole story, which is called a whole story because it uses a card that doesn't have a hole. Therefore, it is a whole story. So this is where the confusion and potential for negativity can seep in. If we're talking about the whole story, are we talking about the whole story or the whole story? I'll let you decide, and as the story goes on. But this is how this story and this little trick works, because you turn one whole card over, you place it behind the other kind of whole card, and look what happens. Bippity boppity boo. Spot card. Everyone go yay! Woo! Woo! Yay. Or woo. Woo's work too. Woo. I'm a poet. I didn't even know it. But the same thing happens over here. Everyone go yay! Or
yay.
woo. Or woo works as well. Now this is a neat trick, but this isn't what I wanted to show you, because you see the spot card is created by putting 2 whole cards together. It creates the illusion of a spot card. This is not created with 2 cards. This is a real honest to goodness. I mean, you can actually feel that. That is a real spot on there, right? That's just one card that's not coming on. Isn't that neat? Yes?
Spot on.
It is spot on. I'm using that line from now on. Thank you. But then again, that's not the trick I wanted to show you. That's a neat trick. But that's not the trick. One whole card, put it together, spot card. One whole card, no spots. But we could see spots if we say the magic words. What are the magic words?
Abracadabra.
That's exactly right. You've seen the show before, Alex. We say abracadabra, and then we get a whole bunch of spots.
What?
So now we have a whole bunch of spots over here. We have a whole card that has a spot. We have a whole card and a whole card with a spot. This is what I want to show you. This whole card is also a spot card. It's just that you can't see it because it's a red spot on a red card. If we magnify it and transfer it
Oops.
to the other hole card. Then we get a hole card that has a spot. We have a hole card that has a spot that we can't see. We have a whole bunch of spots, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the whole story. Thank you very much.
Whoa, whoa.
That makes a little more sense now, hopefully. Whole with an H, not a WH, right? So when we're talking about positivity, which definition are we using? Are we using the definition of the RCG syndrome? I can't even spell it. Or are we talking about something more? This whole thing about saying one thing and being interpreted another way is the same thing that makes magic tricks work. Magicians capitalize on this all the time. But it's also the same thing that comedians also use. In fact, one of my favorite books, it's called Absurd Jokes. Any of you heard of this book? No, not many people have. I wrote it. It's called Absurd Jokes by Jonas Cain. It's destined to become a bestseller in Brattleboro, I think. It has such destined to be classics. Okay, this is my proudest, this is the joke I love the most. What's cold and makes people laugh?
Well, I know one thing, Jonas. The cold weather.
The cold weather, it can make us laugh if that's what we're into, right? But it's ice tickles.
Oh,
Hey, Jonas.
ice tickles.
Like icicles, but they're ice tickles.
Yeah, hey, Jonas. Hey, Jonas. You know, in a couple of weeks, there's this big event taking place in Alaska, which I wish, I just heard on the news, the state of Alaska had a big earthquake, and I tried to say, Alaska's on the earthquake fault line.
Can you say that till after?
Speaking of Alaska, I also, there's a number of stately jokes in here.
Oh.
I don't know if I can find it, but I think I remember it. It's, what did Tennessee? Idaho, Alaska.
What Arkansas?
What did Arkansas? Oh, Arkansas.
What, he saw what Arkansas?
He saw what Arkansas. Mississippi gave Missouri a New Jersey. These are all very stately jokes. Bye now. I won't tell any more jokes from here, but what we will do, and your name again, sir?
Jack.
Jack is going to help us out with this. I'm going to flip through the pages of the Absurd Joke Book. Wherever you say stop, that's going to become your page.
Okay.
And you're going to look at the first word of the page. All right, so if it was this page, it would be whenever, right? If it was this page, you would be looking at the word so, right? So the first word of your page. So I'll just flip through, just say stop anywhere you like. Are you happy with this page?
Yes,
You want to change your mind?
that's good.
You know what I like about you? Is you're happy.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm going to put the bookmark in. You're going to look at the first word, but don't tell anyone what the word is just yet. In a moment, you'll tell us, but not yet. Just take a look and just sort of keep it to yourself. You see it?
Yeah.
If I ask you later, you'll be able to tell us?
Yeah.
You may hold on to the book. Inside my pocket. I'm getting goosebumps already because I know what's about to happen. Inside my pocket, I have a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, I have a word written down. Is it possible that the word written down on this piece of paper is it possible that it's your word?
Unlikely.
1 in a trillion.
1 in a trillion, because there's at least 1 trillion words. I don't know how many words there are. There's lots of words, right? I don't know how many words are in the book. I didn't count all the words, but it's possible. It's just not likely. But that's what positivity magic is all about. Taking what is apparently impossible and making it become possible. As soon as you say your word, my hand is on the piece of paper. As soon as you say it, I'm going to take the piece of paper out, unfold it, and show everyone. Are you ready? What is your word?
Eat.
Eat. The word is eat. Let's see. CD. I just passed it. Look, it's a piece of paper that was inside my pocket. And look, there's a word written down. What is that word?
Oh, there it is, yeah.
It's eat. Give him a nice big hand.
It gets better.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I know you.
Now, What I love about this, other than being an absurd joke, is that what I said was completely true. I was not lying. There was a piece of paper inside my pocket with a word written down. Now, of course, we probably thought I meant one piece of paper with one word. But it's the same information, it highlights different pieces of the data to create a different expression of truth.
I know you
I'm
want.
getting more goosebumps now. Now, for those of us who did think I meant one piece of paper and one word, in the back of this book, I have a very special piece of paper. So special, I even put a little picture of me on the one side. It's actually stuck inside the book. What was your word again? Ladies and gentlemen, let's
Oh.
eat.
Yeah.
Let's give him a nice big hand. Thank you so much. You may keep the card and the book as a
Oh,
souvenir.
thank you.
You're welcome. Enjoy. Same set of information, a different expression to create a different reality. So understanding what we mean by positivity, do we mean put on rose-colored glasses, pretend everything is fine, or do we mean something more? Well, in the book, Are You Positive? Rethinking Positive Thinking, I outline an understanding of positivity that I've based off of perhaps, we use the word positive in many different ways. But the way that we're going to be using it is described on page 6 and 7. We're talking about to show. Okay, so it's showing optimism and confidence. That's what the dictionary says about the word positive. Showing optimism and confidence, with no possibility of doubt, clear and definite. Page 8 it says showing pleasing progress, gain, or improvement, and dealing only with matters of fact, experience, not speculative or theoretical. So does that sound like rose-colored glasses? With that understanding of what the dictionary says.
Jonas, I do know what that word stands for.
What does it stand for?
Well, when I see trains shriek by, I think of the history of the United States and our railroads. So I'm trying to bring this old experience back for the new generation to exhibit. And there's this one piece of history which I'm trying to dispose of. When they make movies, Jonas says, I see those people who usually shout, action, the directors, and I was thinking, since you're always around, you could eliminate the director, poof, make him disappear. So the movie we made with a train instead of a director shouting, screeching directions, because the train's part of the action, not stand still, it's moving.
Well, that's a different kind of magic
No.
than the magic. So you bring up a good point, though, because the magic that I think that we oftentimes think of is like the word positive. There's so many different connotations. Are we talking about the magic that we talking about, like Gandalf and Merlin, where we can apparently do these miracles? Or are we talking about the kind of magic, well, that I've been doing here today with the spots and the holes and the absurd jokes, where we're taking the impossible and we're co-creating with reality. That's positivity. We're co-creating with reality, not ignoring reality. We're not ignoring the directors, we're not ignoring the action, but we're working with it to facilitate positive experiences. So you bring up a good point, because when we say words like, I'm positive, do we mean we're not too sure?
Yeah, that's what I mean, Jonas, because I'm not so sure of our government.
So we're not so in that case, you're not positive.
I'm trying to get the government to loosen up just a wee little bit, so we don't have to pay all those pay the tax bill.
So This brings up another good point about sort of the co-creating with reality. I mean, this isn't a talk about religion, but one of my favorite examples of this comes from the Bible, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the exact, or I'm not exactly a Bible scholar, but there's a story in there that ties into what we're talking about semantics and co-creating with reality. There's the story about the Pharisees trying to heckle Jesus, and they said, oh, well, what do you think about paying taxes to Caesar? Clearly trying to create this divisiveness that we see mirrored even in today's world. The left and the right, we have all this division. Same thing, repeating over and over again. And what I liked about the response that it says in the book, it says that, well, he took out a coin. He says, who was on this coin? It was an image, it was the head of Caesar. He said, well, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. It was such a amazing response because he was able to co-create with reality a positive experience as opposed to creating more division between two sides. That's what positivity, that's the type of positivity that we're talking about. So you bring up another good point, Alex, about even things like taxes can have a positive experience. Even think, it's the two promises that we talk about in life. There's only two promises. I like to think there's a third one, but one promise, of course, is taxes, and the other one is death. But the third, that I think we often overlook, is the last E in the Are You Positive process, which is to expect surprises along the way. Because we may plan all we want, that's the P. We may open our hearts and minds. We may stimulate our passions. We may be identifying our responsibilities. We may be taking consistent action. We may be investing in worthy guides. We may be volunteering our experiences, but along the way, that last E is what saves us in the end, because we could do all of this. But then when the surprises come our way, what are we going to do? Right? I had an experience, I think I was 13, 14 years old, and I was asked to perform in my high school talent show. And I wanted to impress my fellow students, because when you're a teenager, that's all you're trying to do. You're trying to impress people. You're trying to look good. You're trying to be popular. So I wanted to impress people. That was my first mistake. I'll tell you about my second mistake. I decided to do something dangerous. Because what's more impressive than doing something dangerous? I mean, the internet is riddled with YouTube videos of people doing dangerous, stupid things just to get likes and followers and advertisers. People are literally dying because of this. And this story, I almost died. So let me tell you how it happened. I decided to do a version of acid roulette. So it's like Russian roulette, where you have a revolver and you have one bullet in the chamber, and it's a stupid game. No one should ever play this. But I was like, oh, I'm going to impress my fellow students. So I had 5 test tubes. Each one was filled with water, but the last one was filled with hydrochloric acid. The thing about hydrochloric acid, it's colorless, it's odorless, it looks and smells just like water, because water is also colorless and odorless. But the big difference is hydrochloric acid doesn't taste like water. So I was blindfolded. The test tubes were mixed up by a member of the audience, and I was guided behind the table, and I picked up 2 of the test tubes. And I kid you not, this is what I said. I said, don't try this at home. Like doing it in a high school talent show is any better. So I drank one of the test tubes. The very first one I drank had the acid. And everyone thought it was part of the show. They thought it was a joke. They didn't think I would actually use real acid. So everyone just cracked up laughing hysterically. And meanwhile, I'm running around, off stage. I rip the blindfold off. I'm running around, getting water, gurgling with water, swishing my mouth out. And I have this wireless lapel microphone on, so everyone can hear me saying, "No, I'm serious. Get help. Where's my mother?" Because, of course, my mother was in the audience watching this whole thing, at this point, freaking out. So my mother gets me into the car, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm literally hanging out of the passenger window spitting because I can't even swallow my own saliva because it destroyed my esophagus. So I'm hanging out the window spitting, and even despite this, I had the presence of mind to turn to my mother in the middle of this horrible situation, and I said, "We must never speak of this."
We must never.
Speak of this. Because I was already embarrassed for my future self. So I ended up on a feeding tube because I couldn't eat solid food. So I was on a feeding tube for a month. It damaged my esophagus so much I couldn't eat solid food, which was just as well because I couldn't actually taste anything because it ate away the taste buds on my tongue. Thankfully, they grow back. But I tell you this whole story because even in the depths of this negative experience, there is something positive that we could look at to this. Sort of the idea of the silver lining. And the opportunity in this horrible situation is I now know that hydrochloric acid can whiten your teeth. It's the secret to a great smile. I don't recommend it though, Alex. Please don't ever try this at home or anywhere else. Now, I tell you this story, one, because of that ridiculous humor at the end, that it whitens your... Who would want to trade off your near death just to look good? I mean, people do that, I suppose, with plastic surgery all the time, those sort of things. But I also tell you this, because leading up to that performance, I was positive, and I use the word positive in the lowercase p sense, not in this sense of the 8-step. This positive in the sense of it just had to work. It just had to work. It was leading up to the big day, and in my rehearsals I didn't actually use real hydrochloric acid. Why bother practicing something that you can only afford to fail once? So I didn't use real acid, I used seltzer. And in rehearsals, it worked most of the time. But sometimes I still drank the seltzer by mistake. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to put on a positive attitude. It's going to be fine because it has to be fine. That was the third mistake. The first mistake was trying to impress people. The second mistake was deciding to do it at all. But the third mistake was my positive attitude that ignored reality. The definition that we just talked about, the dictionary's definition, dealing only with matters of fact and experience, not speculative or theoretical, showing pleasing progress, gain, or improvement. By adding the word forming ity, the I-T-Y, what we can refer to as positivity, is the quality of being confident and optimistic, demonstrating pleasing progress as a matter of fact and experience. So it's those two things working together. It's not just, being confident and optimistic just for the sake of being confident and optimistic, but what's backing it up as well. So that's what we mean when we talk about positivity and how we can use positivity to co-create positive experiences regardless of what's going on around us. Does anyone have their own examples of maybe a positive attitude not working out and maybe causing more problems that you might wish to share? Anyway, Jack, do you have any? Oh, you can't think of any? No?
I want to say one dumb stuff.
What's that?
Well, in my family business, there's the trucks, and they keep saying Mac, and I want to change the name to a name which will echo the company the trucks were originally built with. I want to change it back to a name which was familiar once upon a time. Pia Belt.
Oh, so they changed their name over time. What do you think the reason was that they changed their name over time?
They wanted to discuss Pia Belt as Mack Truck, and I think Pia Belt was a great name. And Jonathan, I feel like if you were around, you could change all that, like put the word Pia Belt back on every tractor.
Well, again, that's a different type of magic, I think.
No, well, I mean, you could flip the word around, so to say Pia Belt instead of Mack Truck.
I understand.
Yeah.
And well,
No,
I could see about perhaps working on that for another time, but for now, I don't think that's something that I could do because, again, you're talking about working with reality. Working with reality, like comedy, like storytelling, like magic tricks. It's all taking personal experiences, the real tangible things that are happening now that we have experience with and being able to work with it. Whether it's a magic trick to create these illusions, whether it's in real life to enact continual personal growth in our lives. How is this going to work? So, what positivity magic, harnessing the power of real positivity as opposed to the positive thinking rose-colored glasses. I've been doing a lot of research on this, and there is 0% of me that is a rational being. I know people might argue this, seeing as I'm a human, we have the power of rationality, but I'm a very emotional person, ruled by my emotions, which is why in college I had to study philosophy, just so I could learn how to think and formulate rational arguments. So I've been doing a lot of research, taking my personal experiences with positivity, both the negative aspects of the rose-colored glasses, and then the real aspects of like, okay, let's now gain real confidence, real solid ground optimism, and taking these personal experiences and translating them into tangible steps, like the 8 steps for thinking, being, and staying positive. In this research, I have been fascinated by this. And that's the key word, fascination. The ground floor of positivity and negativity are the same. The ground floor of happiness and unhappiness, it's the same. The ground floor is an opportunity. What the ground floor is acceptance. And the research that I'm finding, it's showing that 50%, according to several studies, it's showing that roughly 50% of our lives are completely out of our hands. It's our DNA, it's our biology, it's our heredity. This is stuff that we can't control. We can't go back in time and have different parents give birth to us, right? We can't control that. Now, a lot of people see, oh, I can't control half my life, they get frustrated.
Yeah.
And when we get frustrated, we move from acceptance as the ground floor, we get frustrated because we can't control it, so we get frustrated by this. But other folks choose to be fascinated by this, and when we're fascinated, we're curious. We're asking questions. We're working with reality as opposed to sort of using it as an excuse to give up. Instead of giving up, we're building ourselves up. So the key word is fascination. So I am fascinated by this research that I'm finding that 50% of our lives, not up to us. The fascination part, thank goodness. I have so many other things to worry about. I don't have to worry about all that. I can worry about the things that I can control. We're not talking about things we can't control. We're focusing on what we can control. Now, the other 50% that we can control, 10% is made up of our experiences. Now, that said, we can't control the thoughts, the feelings, the words and actions of others. We can't control that. But that makes up part of that 10%. It's our environment. It's where we live. Again, we have some control over where we live, not necessarily where we're born, but are we going to stay there? We're going to move on. It's the people we hang out with. It's about how we look. You know, thankfully, I was born very handsome, so I'm all set. I'm very modest. So I'm handsome, and I'm number one at being modest. No one can beat me at how modest I am. This is true. I am number one. You can't possibly beat me at modesty. Thank you for getting my joke. So it's also how much money you make. So all of these things, this is the 10% of that also buys into our happiness or positivity or negativity. The other 40%, this is a big chunk. The other 40%, this is a game changer. So 50% are heredity, our DNA. 10% are experiences, the things that happen to us, our environments. The other 40%, according to science, and if you're interested in the actual research, please come up and get my email, my business card. I'll be happy to send you all these white papers and research on this. But they say that the other 40% is our choices. We can't control everything. Do we choose to be frustrated and give up, or fascinated and build ourselves up? Now, it sounds like a simple choice, because it is. But I know people who it destroys their life if they get a stubbed toe. I know it ruins my morning. But then I know people that when you sit down with them and you hear their story and you listen to them, you're like, I'm surprised you're even out of bed. Because everyone has a reason to suffer. Everyone has a reason to complain. But we don't have to. We really don't have to. 50% of our life we can't even control. 10% it's what happens to us. The other 40% is what we choose to do with it. This is a real, real game changer. This is why I'm even telling you this. I just learned something. I need to look more into this, but according to my most recent findings in the research that I've been doing, scientists have identified that what we would call positive thinking, like actual positive thinking as opposed to ignoring reality, but actual positive thinking, fascination is another word. By staying fascinated, by staying positive, it changes your DNA. Now, when I read this, I was dumbfounded. We say, whoa, 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 we're born with DNA. Are we mutants? Is it mutating us? This sounds like science fiction. That's crazy. But this is what it works. It's not changing the actual code. I mean, our DNA, it's all the same data. It's the same information. Like we were talking about with the dictionary earlier, and the piece of paper in my pocket with the one word. That's the same information, but it's a different expression of it. In that positive thinking, positive action, taking positive steps as opposed to being frustrated and giving up, what it does is it changes what is highlighted in our DNA. So positivity practice, like having a purpose in life, having a sense of purpose, having a sense that our lives mean something, which for a lot of people that means helping other people, whether it's if you have kids, maybe your sense of purpose is raising good kids. Maybe if you don't have kids, maybe it's working for a charity of some kind. Having a sense of purpose, whatever it is, that's just one example that can literally alter our DNA. And it has to do with inflammation. And again, I have to do more research on this. But what that's going to do is have positive impacts on our health and our opportunities for longevity in life, which if we have a positive sense of purpose, well, that's going to make our whole lives better. Not only our own lives, but the people that we affect in our lives. So literally, what we're talking about can change our DNA. Again, I have to do more research on this, but I am fascinated by the implications that our choices, 40% of our life that we can't control is our choices, and that we can literally change our lives by changing our very DNA. What do you think about this? This blows my mind. What do you think?
What I think is, when I think blow a mind, is I'm trying to get the government to blow like a cap on a soda bottle.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
It stay tight and not can move.
Oh, okay, so putting, this brings up another good point. So part of this book, Are You Positive? Rethinking Positive Thinking, the 8 steps for thinking, being, and staying positive. The first P is plan, play, and pursue, which is basically, it's the idea, plan like you're going to live forever, but don't forget to play like you're going to die tomorrow. It's this idea of balance. Any extreme is going to cause negativity to seep into our lives. I heard it put best. I went to a meditation retreat last weekend. It was a wonderful experience because it really forces you to slow down and really reflect on what really matters. And they were talking about, they had us make two lists. They had a list of all the things that we need to survive, and then the other list of all the things that we want. So these are things we need in order to live. These are the things that we need in order to make life worthwhile, to make life meaningful. And my list for my needs was considerably smaller than the list of wants, because I had things like coffee and my cat and sandwiches. These are things that I wanted, but I knew they weren't necessary for life. But even the things that I thought were necessary, I had to cross off a bunch of them because, well, you don't actually need shelter to live. You might not be able to live very well, but you'll still live. You don't need shelter. You don't need clothes. Yeah, it'll help you. It'll help protect your body, but you might die sooner. But you can live without clothes. So we're crossing out all these different things that even I thought I needed, putting on this new perspective, right? Their idea, which rocked my world, was to have your needs and your wants in balance. Whereas if there's 4 core things that you need in order to live, well, choose 4 things in the want list. Now that doesn't mean we're going to ignore everything else, but it means making those 4 wants outweigh other wants. So having 4 absolute needs, things you absolutely need in life, and make sure you have those, and then balance it out by what are these core 4 wants. And in that way, instead of being extreme, you're able to balance yourself out. What I liked about this idea, again, I just learned about that practice, that strategy, is that we want so many things in life. But by focusing on just 4, it gives us a lot of clarity. Because there's only so many hours in the day. Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to a question, if I don't mind me going back a little bit.
Please.
So you talked about, changing our DNA, which I totally believe in. And there are more and more studies coming out how that sometimes, particularly in generations of dysfunction, how one person who is willing to look at things differently can change that whole dynamic, so then that gets passed down to the next generations. An example is growing up in a home where it was made very clear to me that don't check out your ancestry. We were nothing. We were all servants. We were all nobodies. And learning that coming from these just generations of people that didn't think they had choices, that would, this is just the way it is. They weren't able to dream. They weren't able to, come up with, it was just all reality for them. There was no chance for magic. And how, they've shown that, particularly in addiction, one person is willing to challenge that and change that. We underestimate how that can change generations to come. It just takes one person to start making different decisions. And I truly believe it. I see it all the time with people that have completely changed, have come from backgrounds, generations of dysfunction, and have decided, and then you see what happens to their children, and it's happening in, personally, I'm seeing what's happening with my children. The issues that it's changing. Anyway, I just think that's really fascinating.
That's absolutely beautiful, and it's absolutely right. There's tons of research about that, about how the people that you surround yourself with, which for especially young people, they're raised in a family. That's who they're closest to for the first several years of their lives. That's where they learn lifelong practices that even if their lives significantly change, they're still going to hold those core beliefs, those core perceptions. And but it is just one change in perception can influence an entire group, whether it's a family, whether it's at home, but also in the workplace. Negativity. It just takes one rotten egg at a workplace to destroy the whole.
I just want to
culture.
add one piece to that, because you reminded me. It's just that idea of going from victim mode, you know, rather than this is as much as I'm going to get out of life, and blah, 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 to like, well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe if I turn it on its side and like, oh, actually, like you said before, what came out of you having that acid? And I'm sure we've all got those stories of things that we did. You know, I fell off a ladder, you know, broke a bone in my back a couple of months ago, and right away, even if I'm there on the back and the ambulance is coming, I'm like, I can't wait to find out what the silver lining is, you know? You just like, that was with me from the start, you know?
That is a special skill to have, and it is a skill. It's one of those things that if you're not naturally a fascinated, but that's the term I would use is fascinated. If you're not naturally fascinated, you can become fascinated by setting up these little reminders for ourselves. Like I keep things, one of the things that I keep in my wallet is, oh actually, is it my wallet? Oh, here it is, I was using it earlier, is a coin, you know, there's a symbolic meaning behind this coin, that every time I open up my wallet, it's a reminder that the worst things that can happen to us could be the best things for us,
Yeah.
as long as we stay
Yeah.
fascinated.
Hey, Jonas, I know those things can happen. I am trying to force the United States government to, you know that standstill train that vanished 20 years ago? The Barton Zephyr. I was thinking, since you're such a man of creativity, you could make sure that train didn't vanish.
It vanished? Where'd it go?
Japan.
Oh, it vanished to Japan. You know,
They sold the equipment overseas, and I was angry because I was thinking about, instead of having it in Japan, I was thinking about having it right back here in Vermont. You know what you could have done to make sure the train didn't go to Japan?
what's that?
Put some of your magic and eliminated it from Japan, bang, back here to the Vermont Railway, and used it for the tail end of Amtrak instead of the Japanese, because then we could have been happy, not upset.
You bring up a very good point, Alex, because one of my favorite lines, I love to watch movies. To me, watching a good movie, it's like reading a good book. It's like, I get a lot of benefits from watching a movie that I get out of going to church sometimes, if it's a particularly good homily especially. But one of my favorite quotes comes from The Godfather, which I only saw for the first time maybe a year ago, which I don't know how I went 34 years, 35 years without watching it. But my favorite line, it was only business. Business is business. It's not personal. Is it really just business? Business is made up of people. As I said earlier, I am a very emotional person. There's very little of me that's actually irrational. Like, I have to actually work at being constructive, rational thoughts. And doing research is not, doesn't come natural to me. I like, oh, if I feel it, well, that's true. Well, like, no, well, let's see what other people say about this too. But the idea that, in a lot of the research that I found is that even people who think that they're not emotional, who think they're ruled by numbers, they're numbers people that, so I've been taking, I've studied this process. It's called the DISC personality assessment. DISC, it's an acronym. So there's, in this model, there's 4 different personality types. There's those who are dominant, those who are very results driven. They don't care about the big picture. They just want to see the bottom line. There's the I, which is the inspiring, the influential. These are more outgoing people. They're like game show hosts. They're like the TV personalities. They're like very outgoing people. They want to be involved. There's the S. These are the people who are stable. They're steady. They're very people oriented. And then the C's. These are the numbers people. These are the scientists, the researchers, the accountants. These are every I is dotted, every T is crossed. Sometimes when I'm writing, I don't even dot because the details don't matter to me. It's the big picture, right? The reason I'm telling you this is that even people who are very C-oriented, very correct, very sort of like the detail-oriented, and those who are dominant and very adamant about just the bottom line, even those folks who don't think they're ruled by their emotions, according to science, they actually are. So business is business. They sold the train to Japan. apparently, because it was business is business, but really everything is, we're all ruled ultimately by fears. There's a book that I'm reading right now. It's called The Biology of Happiness. This is a fascinating book because it's taking happiness from an evolutionary perspective about happiness in us was evolved to keep our human race alive, to stay alive and to procreate. That's pretty much to eat food and procreate. That's what happiness was designed for, according to this research. And that we're all ruled by fears. We're ruled by fears of either losing our lives or losing opportunities to stay alive. And so we run away from dangers and we go towards stability. We go towards things that can generate positive feelings. So we are ruled by fears. In the DISC model, each of the 4 major personality types are ruled by dominant fears. Those who are very direct and dominant, their dominant fear is the fear of being taken advantage of. So you'll see this a lot in groups where one person will keep people from doing things even though everyone else wants to do it, but it's because someone fears being taken advantage of and they project their own fears onto others. The I's, they fear rejection. They don't want to be rejected. So everything that they do is going to be, all the decisions that they're going to make are going to be ruled by that fear. The S's, these are the people who fear change. They don't want things to change. Things have always been this way. If things change, it's going to rock their world. So they're going to try and keep things the way they are. According to their research, most people, like 60% of the population, are S's. I'm one of them, according to the assessment. And then there's also the C's, and these ones fear criticism. So, they're numbers people, like they did all the research, everything. And now you're going to criticize my work. So those people fear criticism. Of course, there's crossovers too, where you might be a mixture of 2 or 3 of them. But those are, according to this research, we are ruled by these emotions. Everyone, even business is business, even people selling trains to China, even if it was just numbers, well, there was a reason that they sold it. Maybe the executives wanted a big bonus that year.
Yeah, but I feel like Jonas, they wish Japan should not taking the train. We could have taken the train back because Amtrak was born.
So ultimately, no matter what decisions that we're doing, 40% of our lives, remember the 50%, it's our DNA, 10% our experiences, 40% our choices. And if we understand that our choices are ruled by our fears, by our emotions, what can we do to override our emotions, that despite our fears, that we can choose positive experiences that build us up rather than tear us down? What do you think about that?
Well,
Judith, you gotta go. Where are you going? Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. Good to see you again. Take care. Nice to see you, Alex.
there's an art fair. There's an art fair.
Oh, there's an art fair. Yeah, I heard about the art fair.
That's what I'm here for.
What time is it? I think I have to go.
12:51.
Yeah, I have to go.
You have to go as well. Well, it was great
And
to
me
see.
too.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's okay. Well, and then it's like in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate. And then there was 2,
This is what Alex made, and he's showing it off tonight.
Oh, this is
Isn't
wonderful.
this beautiful?
Yeah, it's a station.
That's great.
Yes.
That's
Wow, I'd
wonderful.
like to take a train from there.
That's great.
Oh, how interesting.
And the Eiffel Tower?
Yeah.
So we have to leave them here and we have to scoot. Thank you so much.
But you got one of
Nice
the
to
dimes
see
stuck
you
to your
again.
finger.
Yes, and
I didn't get your name.
Bring that with
Lindsay,
Bring
nice
that
to
with
meet
me.
you.
Judith told me that at the last minute, so I was thought, maybe I could go for some of it.
Thank you for sharing too.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was just looking up the disc thing because I would have forgot it, and I was like, oh yeah, I know which one. It's kind of always fun to do that.
Yeah. Which one are you?
Oh, it's
You're the, yeah, oh yeah, most of us are. I'm S, also S and SI.
Yeah, I could go into the I too.
So that's why.
Cutting this part out.
There you go, exactly, yeah, no, good, thank you for
You're welcome. So
There's something on the floor.
for those, so my next
Yeah, you did.
My next presentation is not scheduled yet, but I'm going to be speaking with the powers that be with regard to schedule my next several sessions. I suspect it'll probably be, in 2019, I'm hoping to do the second Fridays of the month, but perhaps we'll keep it at the first Fridays. We'll see what happens. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. Most of all, I hope that we stay positive. Remember, positivity is not rose-colored glasses. Plan, play, and pursue. Keep an open mind. Stimulate your passions. Identify your responsibilities. Take consistent action. Invest in worldly guides. Volunteer your gifts. And most of all, expect surprises along the way. That's the third promise of life. Taxes, death, and surprise. Until next time, my name is Jonas Cain. Stay positive.
Yay.
Nice to meet you, Maris.
Thank you, nice meeting you.
I hope you can come back again.
Thank you.
We'll do. Good to see you. We'll do take 2 of this. It's different every time. I mean, I sometimes share some of the same magic and some of the same stories. Sometimes I come with new ones. Actually, I did have one magic trick I wanted to do. I suppose I can still do it for the camera.
We can do it.
Actually, it was a point that Lindsay had brought up. I was hoping that I had time to squeeze it in, but I can squeeze it in right now. This is I had been looking for a particular kind of magic trick that will drive home a very important point. And it's this one here. Because every magician needs a rabbit trick. And this is my rabbit trick.
Yeah.
I have 4 rabbits, so I'll show you this rabbit in a moment. It's the idea that just one person can affect an entire group. Now, in this case, these rabbits, they're all happy rabbits. But they're all happy. What would happen if we took out one of the happy rabbits, put that rabbit away, and we put in the other rabbit? This is this is the sad rabbit. We could also call this the grumpy rabbit, the negative rabbit, the negative Nancy, the negative Ned. Well, one person, even though it's just one person, whether it's in a family or in the workplace, it can have a negative effect, bringing down the morale of the entire group. So now they're all sad rabbits, which is sad. Because we all have a reason to suffer, but we don't have to. As Lindsay was saying, we have the choice to look at the more positive side of things, to stay fascinated, to stay curious, to ask questions. And when we do that, instead of giving up, well, instead we build ourselves up so that we can facilitate fascinating experiences, not just for ourselves, but for all the people around us as well, so we can all be happy rabbits.
All right.
Yeah. So that's my new favorite magic trick, because it does drive home that point. It just takes one person to create negative experiences, to bring everyone down. Whether it's in a family, you know, there's that one person in a family that can drag us down. It's usually around Thanksgiving, especially talking about politics. That's a big one. Or it's in the workplace where people are, it's just one person who's just always complaining, whether it's like, oh, the drive-in today was terrible. Actually, I talk a lot about this in this book, in the section. I wrote this whole book in the course of like 2 or 3 months, and I got to the end and I realized I forgot something, because I got to the last step, you know, in positive. I finished the E, but then I realized, but what about dealing with negative people? It's one thing to be positive when you're with yourself, but how do you stay positive when there's that one person at work, or that one person at home, or that one friend of yours? So I wrote a whole chapter on staying positive while dealing with negative people. And to do this, I did a lot of research, and I came up with a list of, how many? 20. A list of 20 different ways that negativity can be expressed. Now, in some cases, I combined some, because some of these were very similar. In other cases, I took one expression of negativity and I split up because there were sort of two ways to do it. And in this list, I didn't put any priority or try to list them in order of importance. So I just listed them in alphabetical order. But what was amazing about writing this list was that I realized, Mr. Positivity here, I'm a very negative person. And I didn't even know, because as I was writing this list, I realized, oh, I've done that. Oh, in certain areas, that's what I do. So I'm going to list these off quickly, then I'm going to show you a technique for overcoming this. The arrogant, the people who have a false sense of confidence that masks their insecurities. The blamer, for everything that doesn't work out, it was someone else's fault. 3, the complainer, nothing is ever good enough for them. The controller, it's their way or the highway. And if you don't like it, then get out of the way. The critic, by putting the focus on everyone else's faults, they can hide their own. The gossiper, to feel better about themselves, these people feed off the mistakes and misfortunes of others, whether real or imagined. The jealous, they take no joy in the success of others and often feel like they themselves are more deserving. The judge, these people make no effort to understand the true intentions of others and are quick to judge. The liar, these people have no qualms about being deceitful so long as it makes them look good and keeps them out of trouble. The naysayer, whenever they find a window of opportunity open, they quickly draw the curtains. The plagiarizer, for everything that works out well, they take credit for it. The projectionist, these people project their thoughts and emotions onto others. We talked a little bit about that earlier. The sensitive, these people are impossible to encourage, for every word is perceived as negative criticism. The self-absorbed, these people are painfully unaware of the needs and feelings of others, maintaining a detached distance from others emotionally. The spotlighter, these people crave to be at the center of attention and always find a way to make everything about them. As a magician, I suffer from this. The temperamental, these people lack control of their emotions. The twisted, these people take joy in the misery of others. The user, these people will treat you like a friend, but they will use you for their hidden agenda. The victim, life is out to get them, and they want others to feel sorry for them. That was me for a number of years. I'm trying not to be that way. The worrier, if something can go wrong, whether real or imagined, then they obsess over it until the threat is removed. I am so negative, I didn't even know. And I'm sure as I listed that, probably you've recognized, oh, that's so-and-so at work, or that's so-and-so at home, or oh, that's my friend, or like, oh, I'm guilty of that. Negativity can be expressed in so many different ways, even for ourselves, even if we have the best intentions. But really, it goes back to the 40% of our lives that we can control. We can't control the feelings, thoughts, and emotions of others, but we can control how we respond to them. There's a technique or a model called the Batari box. I did a bunch of research on this. No one knows where the name came from. No one knows where this model came from. I just ascribe it to a universal truth in public domain since the beginning of time. But it's the idea that my attitude affects my behavior. My behavior then affects your behavior and your attitude as well. So if as an example, if you're driving to work in the morning, just as an example, and someone cuts you off, that might put you in a bad mood. And then when you get to work, you start complaining to people at work about the drive-in, and then you get an email from a customer or client, and they're not doing what you want to do. You lash out at your boss. Well, that's going to make other people complain and lash out. So just one little instance. We had a very simple choice when that person cut us off. Be frustrated and give up, or be fascinated and think, perhaps as an alternative to frustration, be like, oh, I wonder why they're in a hurry. And maybe they're in a hurry because they just got the news that the love of their life just died or is in the hospital and they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe it's an off-duty police officer who just got called in and they don't have the lights on. Whatever the case may be, We can choose to be frustrated by it or fascinated by it. It doesn't have to ruin our day. We can stay positive.